The 1.12 or 1.15 million dollars that was in the BRFA that would have to, I guess, start through the process again, but your tag team partner, Senator Edwards, thinks that it probably is still there. Do you feel the same way? And what do you think about the school board acting prior to the resolution of the state funding issue?
Well, I can't speak for the school board, but I did. I think when I talked to you the last time, indicate that maybe they should. I felt reasonably certain that we would be going back down for a special session, and I agree with Senator Edwards in that this provision is contained in the BRFA, whereby it caps the loss of educational funding for the county at 5%, which will result in that $1,159,000 more for the county. That provision is in the BRFA, and the BRFA was passed by the Senate, but there was a difference between the House and the Senate, but that was ironed out in a conference committee, and that provision held in the BRFA. So I feel reasonably certain that we'll only take up the bill will be resubmitted as was agreed to in the conference committee, and that provision will remain in there. And I think I indicated when I talked to you last time that I was hopeful that the Board of Education would wait until we get this final deal worked out before they made a decision. But I think, from what I'm hearing and seeing, that they went through this process with the public hearings and everything, and even though we would retain that amount of money for this year, there's no guarantee it's going to be there next year, and if we lose the funding next year, we're back in the same position that basically we're in now.
That's the one thing that my understanding is many school board members feel that they're really putting the communities through the ringer, and even if they do get the additional state money, that'll be a consideration of theirs, whether they just want to do this again next year at this time. Right. And that's a tough call for an elected official, I would think.
Absolutely. And I don't envy the task that the school board has, and I'm sure it's a real it's sad that we're in the situation we are out here, that we're having to close schools. When you look at the rest of the state, they're getting money to build new schools, and we can't even get enough money or keep our schools open because we're losing student enrollment primarily, and that's also a sign, I think, of the economic conditions that we're experiencing, where young families either don't have work or looking for work elsewhere, or they're not coming in here, and so we have less students going to school, which is really why the main reason why we're looking at having to close these schools.
You've been a commissioner and a delegate, and before that, a sanitary district administrator. And you've seen Garrett County over the years get a little bit bigger, but not big enough to sustain now what we're going through a low ebb now population-wise. Is there a way to turn that around quickly, or are we looking at a 10-year type deal before we can even begin to think of returning to where we were about 3 years ago?
Well, if just looking back over time for going back, say, to World War II days, as we came forward in Garrett County for probably about 30 or 40 years, we basically remained stagnant with no population growth. We've seen some population growth recently, but it's only in the 2 or 3% range. And unless something changes dramatically to provide more jobs and more economic opportunity, I don't see any big increase going forward. And if anything, if you look at what the state's trying to do to us in taking away local planning decisions, and with what they're doing with the farming community, and more obviously with what they're doing with the natural resources that we have out here, in preventing us to be able to utilize and exploit those natural resources for our economic purposes, I really don't see a lot of growth going forward.
Do you think that and you said it earlier this year, and maybe late last year, you called it a war on Western Maryland. Do you still stand by that?
Well, actually, if you look at this year's session and things that was proposed, the state is really trying to shut down development in rural areas, and not only shut down development with what they want to do with septic systems, where you couldn't even put septic systems in certain areas, or reduce the number of lots that could be developed in the rural areas. And one big factor that they passed, one bill they passed this year, was that the county had opted out of requiring sprinkler systems for new homes. And they passed a bill this year in the general, went through, in the last session, that would make it mandatory that all new homes have sprinkler systems. Well, in the areas where you have public water and public sewer, it's not quite as big a deal as it is where you live in the rural areas. If you are in a well and a septic system, and if you have a well, it ends up potentially adding $15,000 or more to the cost of a new home. And so when you have young people starting out to build a new home, or anyone building a new home, if they got to look at adding $15,000 to $20,000 just to put a sprinkler system in, they're going to look elsewhere to build their home.
Wow. As we started the show today, I was talking about trying to get everybody on the same page, and that the future is probably not as bright as some people would want to paint it. You've been in situations where you've held public meetings, and there's been a handful of people showed up. And I've been there for some of those meetings, and it's kind of disheartening. I hear a lot of people now saying that we want to be involved, and my response has been, okay, well, let's start going to the meetings that are being held now in the public sessions. And I know you and Senator Edwards have a session prior to the legislative session for people to show up at. What's your thought on public participation in the process going forward?
Well, one of the things I've kind of witnessed or observed over time is that our working men and women, a lot of times with work and with families and things, they just either have enough to do or don't get involved in going out and participating. And for us, as legislators in Annapolis, we're the furthest ones out, and it's harder for people to get down into Annapolis to witness what's going on and to come to bill hearings and testify against bills. And I have to tell you, the county commissioners and other some of the people that have been involved with various bill sportsmen and other people have do a great job coming down and supporting us on some of this legislation. But just the fact that we don't get Maryland television out here, people do not get as involved or do not know as much about what's going on out here as they do maybe in the rest of the state, and we end up seeing more about Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania politics than we do Maryland politics. But we've made a real conscious effort to try to get more word back to the people during the session. We put a newsletter out, and Senator Edwards and I have been attempting to get more information out so people can understand better what's going on.
Well, that's part of the reason for the show we do here, to try to bring you guys closer to the people and the people closer to you. And I appreciate the call this morning. And, well, when we get closer to a special session, I'm sure we'll chat again.
Okay, Paul, and we appreciate the job that you're doing there and the effort you're making to share some of this stuff with the people in our listening area.
I appreciate it. That is Delegate Wendell Beitzel calling us from Garrett County, but hopefully soon he'll be back in Annapolis to talk about the issues that are concerning a lot of people around here and across the state, as the legislature is most definitely, more than likely, I should say, going to be going back into special session probably as early as next month. 301-334-4272, 301-334-3800, the numbers to call. It's Train of Thought this morning on 92.3 The Train. It's 12 minutes in front of 10 o'clock. We'll take a break and be back right after this. It's Train of Thought on 92.3 The Train. We had a caller on the line during the break. They wanted Danielle Martin to call back in and give the website address for the petition drive that they are organizing to appeal the decision of the Board of Education to close Dennett Road and Kitzmiller Elementary Schools. Okay, and again, our number here, 301-334-4272, 301-334-3800. Very busy morning here, and it kind of is nice to have people participating in the process. This is the start as far as I'd like to see a number of people get involved in the process. Not necessarily just calling in the radio show, but get out there, go to the meetings and say, these are our priorities. And we have a caller on the line. It could be Danielle. Let's see what we got. Good morning.
Good morning. This is Diane Dunham again. I know Danielle's pretty busy this morning, so
yeah, I could hear that in the background when she called in the first time. She had her hands full.
Yeah, she's pretty busy this morning. They can visit our webpage on Facebook called Rally to Save Garrett County Schools. And also 7-Eleven, there is a petition there that they can sign.
Okay. Is there a required number of signatures that you have to have on that petition, Diane?
There's no required number. We do currently have quite a few signatures. And we have petition going around on the northern end as well as the southern end.
Okay.
A lot of people are going door to door, and businesses have petitions in their business places. But I do know that 7-Eleven has a petition, so anybody interested in signing, they can go there.
Uh-huh.